pharmaceutical companies and the food companies basically paying off the FDA, politicians to vote a certain way. Same thing with war. Vote this way, we want to prolong this war, we're going to develop more supplies for it.
It just makes you wonder if any of the elites have our best interests at heart, because in our industrial food supply, the majority of our nutritional research is funded by Big Pharma.
I don't think it's about ending it, but it's business.
You were dealing with some pretty heavy mental illness. It's still just not in vogue to ask for help.
Everything that you've worked so hard to accomplish, you're at the apex of what you do, and now nobody cares because you're not in that anymore. There goes my whole identity. You have to learn how to reinvent yourself. They call it an ego death.
Tens of thousands of our military men and women that are permanently on the chemical hamster wheel, which is further destroying their life. Why are we preventing people from accessing these kinds of therapies?
What really did the trick was psychedelics. The most profound experience of my entire life. And I don't say that lightly.
For you and military men and women that are in your group, what does this election mean to you?
Part of the reason we got to where we were is because people in this country are scared to
Today, we are thrilled to have a remarkable guest on the Ultimate Human podcast, Shawn Ryan. Shawn's journey is one of resilience, purpose, and relentless dedication, from his days as a Navy SEAL and a CIA contractor to becoming a powerful voice in the veteran mental health community. Through his acclaimed show, The Shawn Ryan Show, he's given a voice to the raw experiences of veterans, shedding light on PTSD and the healing potential of alternative therapies, like psychedelics. Today, Shawn will take us deeper into his story. He's going to share the profound ways that his spiritual journey, mental health advocacy, and commitment to self-resilience have shaped his life and his mission. Join us as we uncover powerful insights into what it truly means to be an ultimate human. Hey guys, welcome back to the Ultimate Human Podcast. I'm your host, human biologist Gary Brecka, where we go down the road of everything: wellness, longevity, anti-aging, biohacking, and everything in between. And every once in a while, I am blessed enough to have a truly iconic guest on the podcast, not just a guest that is known to the world, but a guest that has had experiences in life that are just so uncommon, but yet so profound. And today is one of those rare moments on the Ultimate Human where we get to have a really, really impactful guest with an incredibly special and not very common background. Welcome to the podcast, Shawn Ryan.
Hey, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to have you, man. Military icon, the work that you do for veterans, the awareness that you've brought to post-traumatic stress disorder, and even being very authentic about your own journey. I find it very, very inspiring. And, if you've ever watched my podcast, and my audience knows, and it sounds like I'm just repeating the same old line, but so often the people that I have on this podcast that I feel are making the greatest impact in the world are people that have solved a problem in their life, right? And whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder or alcohol addiction or a relationship issue, or they had chronic Lyme disease or whatever it was, and they solved that issue, and because of that journey, they're making a massive impact in the world. And I think you are definitely one of those people that turned a very storied, military career into an impactful message. And I just want to say, on the eve of Veterans Day, Veterans Day is the 11th. What's today?
The 8th.
The 8th. Okay, so it's March 8th. I mean, it's I can't think of a more impactful guest to have on the podcast. So I'm so excited. And sometimes, I tell my friends and family this all the time. I'm like, I don't feel like I work a day in my life, because I really get to sit down with inspiring people like yourself. And so I've watched a lot of your podcasts. I mean, lots of people have watched a lot of your podcasts. And this is a very self-serving question, but of all these incredible military stories and incredible feats that you've had on your podcast, what is the biggest standout for you, if there was?
Guest wise or subject wise? Or
I would say let's do guest wise, and then let's go into subject wise. I mean,
guest wise, military guys, man, there's really,
so many. That's what I was
hard.
saying. Like,
that's hard. That's a really hard
We
question.
were actually just talking about the sniper that did a 2.1 mile shot and made a kill. I mean, these are the kinds of stories you'll find on this podcast. If you're not familiar with Shawn Ryan, you should be. And just the infinite amount of complexity of that, you know, a 10-second bullet trajectory. But you've had so many of these icons on, and you even started a foundation to preserve these stories, right?
I didn't start a foundation.
Oh.
I help with a couple of different nonprofits, but
Okay.
I think there's been a lot of really big, impactful stories on the show. So I don't want to say my favorite one because I don't really have one.
Good.
But some of the most impactful ones that I think there was earlier on in my podcast. I had this guy on, DJ Shipley, SEAL Team 6 guy, really like poured his heart and soul out, and I mean talked about his suicide attempts, talked about his infidelity and the challenges that his wife and him went through. He talked about a lot of stuff that is really important. That it's a peek behind the curtain that nobody gets to look at. And another guy that I think is you got to meet DJ, by the way. You guys would get along really good.
Is he a science nerd?
He's a health nerd.
Is he?
And,
Okay. He's my guy then.
and a beast.
Yeah.
But another guy, Tom Satterley, one of my favorite humans on the planet. He was a Delta guy. I'm sure you've heard the story about Black Hawk Down back in Mogadishu. And a lot of people say that kind of the main character in that movie was Tom. Tom was a very junior Delta guy at the time and went through that, talks about it very, very in depth, very detailed, and served all the way through, you know, OEF, OIF, and just a awesome human being. But there's been a ton of guys.
Because I always wonder, you know, when you see these elite special forces, and you were SEAL Team 2 and SEAL Team 8, right? And for folks that don't know the difference, I mean, we always hear SEAL Team 6, but what are the difference between the different SEAL teams? And what are the numbers really indicating? A specialty?
The numbers. So you go through BUDS. You go through BUDS. You go through SQT. Everybody becomes a SEAL. And then, so all the odd number teams are on the West Coast. All the even number teams are on the East Coast, out of Little Creek, Virginia, or Dam Neck. West Coast teams are all out of Coronado, California. And then there's an SDV team that's out of Hawaii, and that's like the mini submarines. And then SEAL Team 6. So you get through, you go to a regular SEAL team, and you either go East or West Coast or Hawaii, and then I don't know what it is now, but you could basically kind of do one enlistment or two platoons. Two platoons means 2 deployments. And so after you do 2 deployments, then you can screen to go over development group. And so screening is it's kind of a series of things. It's an interview with your current command. It's a physical fitness test. You go interview over at development group, and they kind of see, you know, if they think that you would be a good fit. And so that's if you're going to make it a career, that's the next step. You go to the next
what is
level.
that? What is that kind of career? When you say be a good fit to continue being a SEAL?
Well, so when you go to development group, you go through a whole nother training course as well. So you go to the SEAL teams, you do your deployments, and then basically you try out. It's a tryout for the next level.
Wow.
And so,
So there's another level above like the SEALs. I mean, there's like the Ultra SEAls. I mean,
pretty much.
They're like super SEAls. You know, I've heard you, you know, talk about some of your real world experience. One in particular was Haiti, I believe, where you guys were, you know, patrolling at very low altitudes. And I mean, Hollywood has kind of sensationalized that, but this was a very troubled part of the world, you know, at that period of time, and a very ruthless part of the world. And I don't think that they really wanted us to be there. And Can you talk a little bit about that experience for, for folks that have never actually faced combat experience? To me, it's fascinating because I feel like you can train yourself for just about anything, but I would imagine that no mission goes exactly like you plan. I mean, you have to find yourself in a place of the unknown. And this place of the unknown has got to be one of the darkest, most frightening places, because usually the types of unknowns that someone with your career would find would be things that could end your life. Right. And it's a metaphor for business, and it's a metaphor for life. It's a metaphor for relationships, because, like when a mother has a baby, there's no manual on how to raise the child. When you get into a marriage, there's no manual on how to have a good marriage. When you start a business, there's really no step-by-step manual on how to grow a business. And I think in life, we find ourselves in so many places of the unknown. Like, we started out with one intention. You guys go in with one mission. And then, holy shit, things don't go as planned. And maybe my exit strategy is now I don't have it any longer. And the support that I thought I was going to have is no longer with me. And, I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit, about when your training takes you to a place where you're outside of your background, and your preparedness.
I'm excited to offer you free access to my premium membership, the Rule Breckas. As a Rule Brecka, you'll be able to join me for monthly Q&A sessions, VIP access to all the challenges I host, and advanced access to my most exclusive content. To get your free 30-day trial of Rule Breckas, head over to joinrulebreckas.com. That's joinrulebreckas.com right now.
Now let's get back to the Ultimate Human podcast.
In training, you want to talk about?
No, I want to talk about it in real life, real combat.
Okay,
because you're one of the few that's actually seen real combat. And I was listening to some of your Haiti stories in them, and they were just terrifying about how roadside bombs were taking out your guys, and you're flying at very low levels, which is very dangerous. I imagine small arms fire could get to you at those levels. So, I mean, you're in a constant state of fight or flight. I'd love it if you could talk about a situation that you found yourself in where you were truly in that unknown. Like, I didn't expect this. Maybe I didn't train for this. Maybe the exit I planned is cut off, and now what do I do?
Yeah. There's a lot of those. So
I was hoping there was only like one or two, but
no, there's a lot of them. But I actually I didn't do a whole lot in Haiti. It was 2004. There was a lot of civil unrest there. Aristide was the president at the time. He got yanked out. Wasn't me. I would have loved to have yanked him out.
Yeah,
but it wasn't me.
One of your guys yank him out.
Yeah, well, I think it was Team 6.
Okay,
but we were basically going to all these outer cities in Haiti to kind of get a pulse on what the rest of the country was like outside of Port-au-Prince, the capital. And it was just no shots were fired. But a lot of prisons were not functioning, and prisoners were, criminals were just everywhere. There were a lot of bodies kind of floating around and stuff on the shore. But the majority of my combat stuff was all Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen. And so what's one I haven't talked about in a while? We did this one. I was at, this is actually when I was at the CIA. We were at I think it was around 2012 time frame. I don't know how.
Yeah, because after the SEALs, you went into the CIA.
Yeah. So around 2012 time frame, I don't know how closely you followed the war, but there was an area of Afghanistan. It was supposed to be what was basically getting ready to happen there. It was going to be the biggest offensive push by the U.S. Marine Corps since Fallujah. And everybody knows about Fallujah. Fallujah was by far the bloodiest, deadliest battle of both those wars. And so, big push to go and kind of push Taliban, Al Qaeda out of the cities there.
When you say push them out of the cities, you're going in to kill them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not me.
Yeah.
I'm agency
No,
at
you've
this
never
point.
hurt
We're
anybody.
way back.
No, you're no.
We're back behind.
No.
We're in the thick of it, but we are. That's not my job anymore. Is to
Right.
go in and do that. Honestly, it never was. That's more of a infantry, conventional type operation. But anyways, before that push even got started, it was just a couple teams of us embedded down there to do surveillance and do some liaison stuff with the local government down there, and basically just collect intelligence.
Mhm.
And so, but one thing that we kept fucking up. Can I say that on
Yeah,
here?
you can say fucked up.
So there's some things when you're working intelligence or surveillance that are it's just a no-go. Don't ever be time, place predictable. Don't take the same routes. Don't take the same routes at the same time. Don't have different routes into wherever you're going. And when I'd gotten there, there was just a big bombing. It was horrible. A lot of agency personnel died. Basically, they had a double agent come in, present a fucking birthday cake to the chief of station. A lot of people at the agency get like kind of attached to their assets and emotionally
And
attached.
he was a true double agent.
Yep. And
So he was trusted by the CIA.
the cake. Yep.
And
Cake went
but he
boom.
was he took himself out too.
Yeah, and he took out all the leadership. Took out.
Oh my God.
Took a lot of people out. And so that had just happened when I showed up here. And I had said, hey, we're time and place predictable. The fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
And of course, nobody wanted to listen
Mhm.
because when people like me come around for those type of operations, a lot of times I think we get in the way, but there's a reason we're there. That's
Yeah.
why. And nobody wanted to listen. Next morning, we got up. Boom. There's like 100 and something Taliban fighters on the other side of the river. They know exactly where our compound is. So they started hitting the compound. We're in
They
a little house.
Woke up in the morning. You're in a little house.
Yep.
It's 100
Yep.
heavily
And-
armed fighters out there.
And shots just start coming through the house. And there's only a couple of us. And so the reason we knew there was over 100 Taliban fighters is because we had drones on station and they were reporting in. And so that wound up going until about midnight. That night, they started maneuvering around. They got in this big, probably 10, 15-story building, started shooting at us from over there. And nobody would come get us. So
Wow. Why not?
yeah, I thought that's a that's a great question.
Yeah.
But it just wound up being,
Wow.
we didn't have a lot of supplies. We didn't
Meaning a lot of
bullets.
bullets. Oh,
We didn't have a
God.
lot of anything. And yeah, so it was a lot of switching out people on the roof and burning classified materials and thinking, holy shit, we're gonna fucking die here. I knew this was coming. We were time and place predictable. And the British actually wound up coming in around midnight to get our asses out of there.
British Special Forces.
Just British Army, not
Really?
British Special Forces. The big machine rolled through the town and got our asses out of there.
Wow. Now, how were you communicating with them? I mean, how did
Radios.
sharing intelligence? You were
Well, there was so remember they were getting ready for the biggest offensive push since Fallujah. So there were some Americans around. There was a big kind of ISAF base close by that had Polish special forces. Those guys were going out getting some like every night, multiple times a night.
really
And then
just getting engaged.
yeah, they were. I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
but they were going out a lot.
Okay.
And then it was big Brit base. So the British Army came in and pulled us out of there.
Thank God.
But I mean, I could go in.
But you were able to hold off 100 armed soldiers daylight to day.
It wasn't like it wasn't like they were like right outside the door. You know,
Right.
we couldn't even see the 100 Taliban fighters who were amassing on the other side of this river that we were on. It was we started taking contact. Then they infiltrated that building that I was telling you about. You can find this. I should find the clip and send it to you.
Wow.
But they were hitting us from that building, and then they were sending teams around kind of this neighborhood. We were kind of like it sounds weird, but it's the only way to really describe it in terms that Americans would be able to kind of understand it. It would be kind of like a small gated community, but we only have one little section of it. And so they had guys coming around the walls, like trying to figure out exactly, you know, which little area was ours. And then when they pinpointed it, they got on that massive building and started shooting RPGs, small arms fire.
RPGs.
Yeah. They sent the local, we sent some Afghan forces to go try to take care of it. And they were dropping grenades off the top story of the building, trying to kill those guys who were coming up to get them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And, you know, I think for people that weren't really close to that war or following that war, I mean, most of us get our information from the media, which is probably 2% of that is accurate. I'm giving them
That would
a
be
win.
a generous
Yeah,
percentage.
I'm
just kidding.
I'm giving him a win, you know. I'm feeling kind of bad for him in the wake of what just happened. So,
Oh, don't feel bad.
yeah. You haven't sent any flowers out to
No.
no.
I'm trolling all the mainstream now.
I know.
Or
We
the
talked
legacy
about
media.
that earlier.
I like
Yeah.
trolling them now.
Yeah, you've never watched so much MSNBC in your life, have you?
No. Oh man.
That's okay if you gloat over the meltdowns. It's all right to take a victory lap. But you know, when I think a lot of times, you know, over here, you know, the populace thinks of, you know, the Afghan armies, you know, they're like a bunch of just ragtag kids, you know, with the bandana, barely know how to shoot a gun. You know, they're probably working in a supermarket, and then at night they're fighting. You know, as I watch your podcast and hear some of the stories, I mean, they're a lot more sophisticated,
Yeah.
and even a lot more trained than I think the average person believes that they are. I mean, I think the average person, they see a lot of these videos on TV. Nobody's in the same uniform. Their trucks aren't, you know, perfect governmental vehicles. Everybody's kind of hanging on the back of a pickup truck, and it just looked like a bunch of loosely gathered drinking buddies with a rifle. But it's not like that. Right?
No.
I mean,
It's not at all. I mean, I think of something that Americans grossly underestimate is the Afghan army and the people that are fighting over there. And I think where they really mistake it is just because those people don't have, you know, they live without a lot of things doesn't mean they're fucking stupid or doesn't mean they're not effective. And
That's a great point.
You know, I think a lot of Americans are like, oh, that guy dresses like that. He doesn't have the proper equipment. He can't. Bullshit, man. Those people are extremely resourceful. They're very intelligent and they're very effective. And
I think that's a huge misnomer, right?
Yeah.
That they're just a bunch of dumb hillbillies. You know,
there's also the experience too. I mean, you can take a guy like me that spent 14 years in and out of there. Well, 14 years in and out of there is nothing compared to just 14 years straight or over 20 years straight or some of these older village elders that have been there since the Russians invaded and been through that. And then now all the way through this. I mean, I come home, you know, I do a 6-month deployment. I come home. The agency, I go 45 days, maybe 60 days, come home. They live there for 20 years. They don't go on vacation. They don't go home to their families back in the States where everything's fine. They're just gaining all of that experience throughout those years. And
right.
so their commandos are more experienced than ours.
Wow. I think that's a real level set as to what we faced, because I think it was always shocking when we would hear these stories of mass casualties or so many, of our military men and women, not coming home. And you go, how are we not just steamrolling over these people? I mean, we're the largest military force on the globe. We're the most sophisticated. We're the highest trained. And then this should have been a, virtual walk in the park. Is that a lot of, because there's also a political war keeping you guys from doing what you really need to get done? Or is it because they were a lot more formidable than you thought, or than our military brass thought?
Can you?
So like, I'm seeing like, did we underestimate them is basically what I'm saying, or I've also, again, through your podcast, I've seen a lot of stories where, the guys on the ground, the fighting forces wanted to finish a job, but for political reasons, they couldn't engage, or they were redirected somewhere else. And it, it seemed like there was this tug of war between the command at the very, very top, sort of running things maybe out of Washington. And I don't profess to be a military scholar by any means, but, running things out of Washington, and then what was going on in the ground. And sometimes we just didn't give our guys the authority to just finish the job.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think.
And is that part of why it just drug on and drug on and drug on?
Well, I think it drug on and drug on because war is a business. But in the beginning, I mean, I don't think it's hard to say. I would say that the disconnected upper brass of the military, the DC crowd, definitely underestimated the capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that are actually on the ground experiencing what's going on maybe underestimated at the very beginning, but quickly became a new reality when you did see what they were capable of. So now what changed the war? I don't know exactly what the turning point was, but at the beginning, it did seem to be that we were there for the right reasons. The ROEs were loosened up. They made sense. They leaned on the benefit of the U.S. service member, and at the beginning of the Afghanistan war, that was and always should have been a special operations war. Very precise
strategic,
hits.
precise.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it at some point in time, the big machine wanted to come in. Then in came all the bureaucrats, and then everything changed. And I think that change happened right around 2005. I think that Operation Red Wings, that was, if you seen the movie The Lone Survivor, that was that operation. At that time,
What was that one about?
That was, so they had inserted a team of snipers on a mountaintop to overwatch a valley. There was a HVT down there that they wanted or something. I can't remember exactly. Goat herder went up the mountain, found the sniper team kind of by accident. They made a judgment call. Hey, let him go back. He went back, and then a whole army came and killed everybody on the sniper team except one guy who got away. We sent some helos in. Is a QRF. That's a quick reactionary force, kind of like a backup. And those helos got shot down. It was the biggest loss in SEAL team history until Extortion 17. So that operation,
and that was a SEAL team. That was SEAL sniper team. And they were just overpowered.
Yeah, they were. There was only 4 of them.
Wow.
Danny Dietz, Matt Axelson, Murphy, Lieutenant Mike Murphy, and then Marcus Luttrell, who was the survivor.
Wow.
And then the helos that got shot down to come and reinforce those guys.
Wow.
And so that was a lot of controversy around that operation within the SEAL teams and within special operations. My team was actually the one that went in to relieve those guys. SEAL Team 2 went in to relieve Team 10 after that had happened, and they just shut down all operations. It seemed like.
What do you mean?
When I went, I mean, we just kept we would kept putting in these packages for operations, going after people, and everything was getting denied. And just being there at that time and knowing what everybody was doing before then versus after, that may have been a turning point. It did get very political. There was a lot of politics being played between upper leadership at the SEAL teams versus SOCOM, and I think that may have been part of it. The other thing I think that happened is Dick Cheney and Halliburton.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow. Because you said, war is a business.
War is a business.
And sadly, there is a military industrial complex.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it's privatized. And I don't think that, most of America is even aware of the money that's made from foreign wars. I mean, you often wonder, like, what is our interest in just continuing these endless wars? I mean, we've gotten so many of them in the last 3 years. And I'm sure you have an opinion on that, and I'd love to hear it. We didn't have any for 4 years, and then now all of a sudden you've got conflicts in Israel, and you've got conflicts in Iran, and you've got conflicts obviously in Russia and Ukraine, and it seems like the whole world's going to hell in a handbasket quick. And we pull out Afghanistan, we leave $83 billion of our military equipment, which I saw the parade that they were kind enough to do the other day. I mean, but this military industrial complex, I mean, what's behind that? Who's driving the private companies that are pro-war? Because
I mean, that's who's driving it. I mean, back then you got to look at where Dick Cheney.
You can just call him Dick.
Yeah. He is a fucking dick, isn't he?
It is.
But
yeah. So if you just want to say Dick, I mean, we'll know who it is. You can even call him the Dick, Big Dick.
But he was CEO of Halliburton, and Halliburton was the logistics company. Halliburton KBR was the logistics company that put in all logistics for Operation Iraqi Freedom and the Afghanistan war. And so, what does that mean? That means they are the ones building all of the barracks. They're building the chow halls. Any infrastructure that needs building, KBR builds it. KBR delivers the mail. KBR cooks the food. KBR has the cleaning crews. KBR has the fuel points. They deliver the fuel. They have every possible logistical thing you can think of was done
for
by
war.
KBR in 2 different wars. And the vice president of the United States was the former CEO of Halliburton when that happened.
Wow.
So now you can see,
wow,
the conflict of interest.
I mean, we see the same thing. I'm much more cognizant of the food supply in our country, but it just makes you wonder if any of the elites have our best interests at heart, because in our industrial food supply, the majority of our nutritional research is funded by big food, big pharma, which is what we were talking about earlier. That's why Lucky Charms are listed as more nutritious than grass-fed steak. The majority of our research that gets approved through the Food and Drug Administration, funded by big pharma, which actually leads to the drugs. The food makes us sick, and the drugs fix they prolong what the food causes. And it's why we have 65, almost 70% of our diet coming from highly processed foods. Because when private enterprise is allowed to influence public policy, especially in war, I mean, people are dying for that. I had a podcast guest on the other day that said, we've privatized the profits, but we've socialized the expense. Meaning the profits go to private enterprise, but the expense goes to the American taxpayer. Expense goes to the people. And you see this over and over again. I mean, you see that in the pandemic, where did the profits go? And who picked up the bill?
Yeah.
When we know where the profits went, and the taxpayer picked up the bill. And I just didn't have as much of non-myopic view into wartime. But it doesn't surprise me that you have people that stand to make billions of dollars off of a war that is either unnecessary or could have then been done in a much different way.
I mean, think about it. I mean,
Ukraine's got to be the same thing. I still haven't figured out Ukraine thing.
Yeah,
I'd love
so
to hear your opinion on
it's
that.
the same thing. I mean, you're talking about the pharmaceutical companies and the food companies basically paying off the FDA, politicians to vote a certain way. Same thing with war, right? So you got, I mean, we left all those helicopters and tanks and everything over in Afghanistan, right? You don't think that, I don't know, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Raytheon, all these places were like, oh, just leave that shit there. We'll build you new ones.
We'll build you
we
another
have all this
83
extra
billion.
equipment. Cool. Send that over to Ukraine. We'll build you some new shit. You know what I mean? And so that's how it happens. It's, hey, vote this way. We want to prolong this war.
Yeah.
It needs, we're going to develop more supplies for it.
Yeah. How have we spent $110 billion or maybe even more? I've even heard $200 billion. And things are at a stalemate. Like, what did we get for $110 billion? Did we get any shift in the dynamic of the conflict, or did we just basically kick the can down the road and we still have this prolonged stalemate?
I don't think it's about ending it. I think it's about its business, and so it's all of these companies selling their technology and their wartime products, their weapons, their bullets, their radios, jammers, logistics companies, all of that. They want the war to continue moving on, because that's their business. And if there is no war, these guys aren't making any money. It's just back to research and development.
Do you think Trump's going to put an end to that? I know you've got to be pretty pleased with the
I hope so, man.
events of the last week.
Some big promises, but I mean, look, it's already happening. I mean, shit, it's been 2-3 days since the election.
Yeah. And
Hamas has already said, we're done. We're done. I saw that come out in Newsweek.
Yeah.
And
I'm hoping that we can believe those.
Yeah.
Some of these positive messages that, Hamas is saying, hey, we're going to close up shop and Iran is going to, engage in ceasefire talks right away. I mean, those are really positive things because, I think, again, I am not a war historian or, profess to know anything about wartime strategy. But, when you have these big countries and they think that there's feckless leadership, there's like an open door with there's no consequences. At least they know that there's going to be consequences. And so they're like, we don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
We got 2-3 months until shit's really going to hit the fan for us. Let's come and have, peace talks.
Yeah. I mean, Putin's already wanting to come to the table with negotiations. I mean, when I interviewed Trump, he said that war would be done before he steps into office. So
I remember he said that. I was like, that is a bold statement.
I know.
I mean,
I know.
That is a bold statement. I mean, because the mullahs in Iran, Putin, they don't seem like they bend to anybody else's agenda.
Yeah.
Now they'll bend to a 2x4 to the face. But I don't think that, really tough talk, like I really don't think that those things really frighten them.
Yeah.
So to see them move this fast is pretty interesting. So, I mean, what do you have? Are you aware that we have U.S. military special forces involved in those conflicts right now? I know they're in the region, but they say that we don't have our special forces and our men and women in harm's way, and you're not seeing like the death tolls clicking on the media. But I can't imagine that there's conflicts of this scale and that our men and women are not involved.
I'm sure there's a couple.
Okay.
But there's definitely going to be a couple in there, but I don't think that there is a large majority of U.S. personnel in harm's way in Ukraine.
Well, at least I'm happy to hear that. Are you hopeful that this thing can be resolved? I mean, from where you...
Yeah, 100%.
And how does it end? They annex some territory to Russia, and Ukraine slightly shrinks in size. They have to leave NATO. Like, I'm always curious to figure out, like, there sometimes seems to be such an easy solution, and that's a very myopic view to ending this war. And you'd think, well, why didn't somebody think of that for the last several years while we were funneling hundreds of billions of dollars?
Yeah, I don't. I think we've been lied to about the reasons that we're over there. So I don't know, exactly what it's going to take to end it. But I do think that I've read and I've interviewed some people that say that the region that is being fought over is extremely rich in natural gas. And so, while it's kind of funny, while the Democrats all are, pro Ukraine, let's go, we got to do this. I think the real reason that we are there, or that we are aiding that, is because I think that if Ukraine holds on to that, we will be the ones to build the infrastructure to pipe in all the natural gas into Europe. Now, if you remember before, that was Russia that was piping in all that natural gas to Europe. And Trump had even said, you guys are stupid. Your enemy is supplying you with your energy supply. So while, while the Democrats or the previous administration, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, paints it out as some kind of humanitarian mission, I think the real reason that we were there is to actually build the infrastructure around those natural gas reserves to pump that into Europe, because that boosts our economy. That is, whether you agree with it or not, hey, big surprise, U.S. is involved in another fucking oil war.
Right.
Or, I guess not oil this time.
Well, look at the
gas.
Keystone Pipeline.
Yep. But it also puts a major dent in Russia's economy, because if they're not supplying all of Europe with natural gas from their pipeline, and U.S. builds the infrastructure in Ukraine to pipe in the natural gas, well, then, that would be amazing for our economy.
Right.
I think that would be a hard sell.
So we're getting back to being energy independent on our own soil. Which is a cool
not
concept.
Necessarily, because what I'm saying is we own basically what I'm saying is, because of all the money that we dumped into Ukraine, and because of all the, because how involved we've been in that war, we have to be paid back somehow. We didn't just give them, however,
I hope not,
hundreds of billions. Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully got an IOU.
But that might seem like chump change compared to the natural gas that's going to feed Europe that we're going to take control of. And so I think that plays a little bit more of a role than people might be aware of, than just, hey, this is. Look, it's fucked up what Russia did. They're trying to take land that doesn't belong to them.
Right. And I remember when they were, I still remember very vividly when they were amassing along the border, and I was like, what do you think is going on? They didn't really hide it. It wasn't a clandestine, like, in the dark of night kind of, surprise raid. They built forces up right on that border for months. And I remember Biden talking about it, but that's probably not a good reference. But, he was like, you could just do a small incursion or whatever he was saying. But it seemed like, we were more aware what was about to happen, that we were like shocked. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that they actually went to Ukraine, and they've been putting tanks on the border for the last 4 months. Yeah. And, I always know that there's more than meets the eye. And when I meet people that have a profound depth of understanding and knowledge, like, I listened to Bobby Kennedy talk about the history of how, in his words, the U.S. really put them in a position to have no choice. And it's such a unique perspective, but he lays things out in such a beautiful manner about, how we refused certain treaties, and we had made agreements with Russia not to allow certain things to happen, like certain countries to join NATO. And then when we recanted on those, we're somehow like surprised that they're behaving that way. And I didn't intend to start this podcast and talk about the Ukraine war. It's usually I'm like way out of my topic zone, but just to have you on here and get some insight into it. But I want to rewind the clock a little bit and get back to your story, because your story is fascinating to me. That when you got out of the military, and you were dealing with some pretty heavy issues. Mental illness, some psychological issues. And we were talking in the kitchen before we came in here about how it's still just not in vogue to ask for help, still not in vogue to, raise your hand and say, I'm not okay. It's usually the families or the spouses or, someone close to them that really tries to reach out and get them help. And I think there has to be a dynamic between somebody that is so highly trained, like a member of a SEAL team, and has seen that kind of combat. I mean, these are the men of men, right? And then to come back and have to be vulnerable. I wondered if you talk a little bit, because you've been very vocal about PTSD and very vocal about your journey. And I wonder if you might even talk about your journey and some of the issues that you solved. I love your psilocybin journey, by the way. I mean, I am fully on board for the psychedelics, for the, versus the chemicals, synthetics, the pharmaceuticals, and some of the other treatments that we can do, ketamine under medical supervision to address the severe inflammatory conditions in the brains of a lot of these soldiers that are really causing them to be tormented inside of their own bodies.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, I mean, I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey with that and how you solved that problem.
Sure. Where would you like me to start? Do you want me to talk about how bad it got?
Yeah. I want you to talk about, as comfortable as you are talking about how bad it got, because that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And the good news is that, I mean, here you are today. Right.
So, yeah, I think there's just to kind of try to put it into a perspective that you might understand. I mean, it's very obvious you've done extremely well. You're at the best at what you do. You built a fucking entire empire that is extremely impressive.
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow.
Now,
that's really kind of you.
Now I'm going to take all that away.
Please don't.
Right now. And you have to figure out how you're going to make a living, feed your family. What are you going to talk about? What are you going to tell people you do? You're proud of what you built, right? So that all goes away and you're just nothing. You have no idea where you're going to take the rest of your life. Most of these guys are under 40 years old, so they still have their whole life ahead of them. So you're dealing with that, number one. Everything that you've worked so hard to accomplish, all the cool stories, you're at the apex of what you do. Nobody's better. You've reached the ceiling.
Yeah.
And now nobody fucking cares because you're not in that anymore.
It's not relevant.
And that's, I think you see that a lot with pro athletes when they retire, when they get hurt, when they're done. It's like, well, there goes my whole identity. And so you have to learn how to reinvent yourself. On top of that, you're also dealing, you guys were talking about this earlier, addiction to adrenaline and the fight or flight response. I mean, busy minds. You're always, I still love a good adrenaline rush, but I mean, when you come out of a job like that, I don't know what the chemicals are. You would know a lot more about that than I would, obviously, but it becomes, that adrenaline dump becomes an addiction. And so you are subconsciously looking for ways to kind of fill that void when you're not on deployment. And then when deployments are all, when they're all over, it is, you get anxiety knowing that you're not going to feel that again. You're not going to feel that it's not even a rush, man. I mean, when you are involved in heavy combat, it is, it's just, it's primitive, man. It's primal. It's There's nothing in the world like it. It is like, I mean, you are, as weird as it sounds, it is a fucking amazing experience if you survive it and walk out of it. And that's all you want to talk about, and that's all you want to feel, and that's all you want to do. And so that's, I mean, that's the reason I got out of the SEAL teams, is I wasn't getting enough of it.
Really?
Yeah, that's a big reason I got
Why,
out.
you weren't being deployed as often? Or
I
you
wasn't getting. I talked about Afghanistan earlier, you know, and that when I got there, things had kind of changed. Started getting political. Bureaucrats started getting in. I mean, when I went in, I wanted to go out every night, multiple times a night. That's all I wanted to do was go
on
out
patrol? You mean
and go
like
to war,
really?
not patrol, combat. And I wasn't getting enough doses of it.
Wow. That's incredible. Like I'd be the opposite. I'm like, I want to go home. But
I mean,
maybe because I don't have that training.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta remember too. I mean, it's years. It's, for me, it was. I mean, I joined the Navy, went through BUDS. BUDS is 6 months if you make it through. For me, without any hangups, almost nobody makes it without any hangups. So you're looking at a good 8 months. I would say 8 to 9 months would be average just to get through BUDS. Then you go through SQT. That's SEAL qualification training. There's another 4 or 5 months. Then you get to your SEAL team. You think you're a badass. Guess what? You're not. You got another year and a half of training at your SEAL team to go to fucking war, you know? And so you're looking at a good 3.5 years of training just to get the opportunity to go to war.
Wow.
So you're ready by the time, or you think you're ready by the time you get there. But, and so I'm kind of going through, back to what we were talking about. I'm kind of going through like all the things that guys deal with. Then there is PTSD, which now they're saying special ops guys, it's called operator syndrome. They're kind of starting to transition that, but you know, it's survivor's guilt. It's all my friends that are now dead. I'm not saying me, but you know, people. Oh, I had to kill a woman. Oh, I had to kill a kid. Oh, fuck, that person was probably innocent. You know, I mean, all the shit that you see, and so there's just the stuff you were talking about earlier with sleep. Nobody I know that comes from this job sleeps,
right,
or sleeps well, and because you're in that constant state of, for lack of a better term, paranoia. Even though once you've done it for so long, it doesn't seem like paranoia. It's just life. And so when you
even that long after, wow.
And so, you know, when you get home, your identity's been stripped. You have all these chemical imbalances in your brain. You've seen more trauma than just about anybody on the planet. And then your own injuries, you know, that you're fighting as well, with, you know, banged up knees, or heaven forbid amputees, you know, stuff like that. These are all the things that are kind of going through your head. And so for me, when I left the agency, I was looking for that adrenaline. And so I moved to Medellin, Colombia, and found that adrenaline by getting involved in cocaine rings. And
what brought you to Medellin? You just went there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And I was there for right about in and out for 5 years, and realized I had a was really skirting the line there. I OD'd a couple times, and pulled through that. And I never even did drugs as a kid.
And did you do them in, you know, it wasn't your military service. I mean, obviously you're not doing drugs in the military. So it's after you got out.
It just
life's just not exciting anymore.
So you
went down to Medellin with a buddy of yours or something, and
it started with a buddy. I started going to Cartagena with a buddy, and then I just started flying solo. down there and started kind of building a lot of contacts and stuff, but got really addicted to cocaine. Had 2 pretty close calls where I overdosed.
And this is just used it for too many days, too often.
It
or
was
did
just
too much.
coke all the time.
Just coke all the
I
time.
remember I was always paranoid that I was. Turns out coke makes you paranoid, but
Who knew?
But
THC, same thing.
but no, I remember my best friend who was with me down there. I would always get worried that I was gonna
There's a
OD.
good friend.
Yeah, and he's dead now.
Okay.
But he said, you don't need to worry. You don't need to worry about your ODing on, if you're on speed, you don't need to worry that you're ODing unless things start to slow down. And I was like, huh, all right, I guess that makes sense. And then I remember the first time I felt it, things started slowing down. My speech was like, sounded like that fucking scene on Old School where Will Ferrell's like, it was everything
like
just slowed down. My voice slowed down. My brain was moving faster than I could talk. I couldn't talk. And I just saw the lights go.
You were really, really wired at the time.
Oh yeah.
So just your central nervous system was just absolutely frying.
Done.
And so the vision starts to narrow.
Yep.
Wow.
The vision narrowed, and then I woke up on the floor of a club.
Of a club.
Yeah.
Wow.
Woke up on the floor of a club. That didn't do it. That was actually my very first time doing coke. But then it started then it happened 2 more times after that, years after that. And so I realized I have a problem, had a problem, left Colombia, kind of got ran out of there actually, but left there, moved to Boca Raton, Florida, and kind of kept at it there. Thought if I removed myself out of that environment that I would clean it up stateside, which I didn't. And then there had a suicide attempt where I just completely lost hope. I mean, my routine, Gary, was
lost hope that you would get out, that you would solve
I just didn't care anymore, man. Like, all my friends were still involved in the war, either in the SEAL teams or a development group or in the agency. And to hear like what those guys were involved in and what they were doing, and I wasn't there. And
then why couldn't you have stayed? I mean, why was it your choice to leave?
It was my choice to leave.
It was your choice.
And
but then you also missed it.
Yeah, I missed it. And I missed it for a long time. And so it ruined all my family relationships just because I was I was drinking more than a fifth of vodka a day. I would wake up, my whole freezer was just completely packed with vodka mini bottles. My glove compartment, my car was packed with vodka mini bottles. Everywhere I went had flask or mini bottles. And that's how I would get through the day, drinking that. And then at night, when I would go back home, I would just pull out a fifth and tug on that until the lights were out. And while I was tugging on that, I would take Ambien, Xanax, Valium, lorazepam, hydrocodone, anything I could to keep my mind from just going all the time.
And how were you able to get that? Just dealers would get their hands on it?
Well, I worked overseas, and turns out that most countries you don't need a prescription to get whatever you want. So I would just go behind the counter and tell them what I want and throw it in a shopping basket and stock up and bring it all home. And I had done that for years, and so I had stockpiles of it at home. And then I was also, when I did finally start to kind of get some help and I started going to therapy, I would get it prescribed, hey, can't sleep, need some Ambien, here you go. Oh, here's some Selenor. Here you go. Here's this. Here you go. I mean, they weren't giving me everything I wanted, but they were definitely,
Right.
I could get it.
What made you raise your hand?
What made me raise my hand?
What made you raise your hand and say, enough, or I want help?
Couple of things. What got me out of Colombia is I went home to visit my family, and when I started ODing, I would call my dad, and like me and my dad are really close, and I would tell him, "Hey, Dad, I need to get the fuck out of here. I'm not going to make it out of here." I wouldn't tell him what I was doing, but he knew, and he was worried. And I went home to visit him, and in a super small town in Missouri, and I don't even know what happened, man. I know me and my dad were supposed to go to a Cardinals baseball game the next day, and I must have blacked out. And
you OD'd again? You took the drugs with you? You were traveling with them?
Yeah, I would bring them everywhere. I can't sleep without. I can't sleep without them. I mean,
these are prescriptions, so you can take them through an airport and all. You weren't taking like coke and stuff like that.
No.
Okay.
No drug trafficking.
Yeah,
but I was like a walking pharmacy for benzos and opiates and sleeping pills. And I woke up and my dad was standing over my bed, and he was like tearing up, and I just could tell he was like, he didn't know what to do. And he wanted me to get some help. And so at that point, I wasn't going to get any help, but I was like, all right, maybe I should like move out of Colombia. And so I did. And then the second kind of wake up call was my suicide attempt. Again, don't really know what happened. I was at Blue Martini in Boca Raton, Florida, and the next minute I'm upstairs waking up in my bed alone, and my whole house smells like gasoline. Came downstairs, saw Glock on my bed, or I'm sorry, on the couch, which I never, and it's not the Glock that I carry or carried for personal defense. It was something that I had pulled out of a safe. So probably was going to do something there. And then,
but you don't even remember that.
I don't. And then I walked out to my garage, and I touched the garage door, and it was hot to the touch. And I was like, oh fuck, what is that? Is there a fire in there? And I remember thinking, if I open this door and there's a fire in there, it's going to get a big rush of oxygen. It's probably going to fucking kill me. So I opened it. And
oh my God.
And nothing happened, but my car was running in there. And I drove an Audi A8 at the time, and seat was all the way reclined back. So I pulled in the garage, closed the door, left the car running, decided I was lights out, let the seat down. Somehow I fucking woke up. It was so hot that the exhaust melted a hole in the fucking gas tank, and the gas tank was leaking onto the exhaust muffler.
Wow.
And there was like a little bitty like fire in there. So I called my best friend Dave Rutherford and kind of told him, the situation I was in. Then I called a really good friend of mine out of Boston who helps veterans. She's like an angel to a lot of people. Her name's Peggy Matthews. And then I called my therapist in Boca, and they were all like, yeah, that's what that was. And
so you think you pulled in prepared to do it, and then something got you up, and you just went upstairs and went to bed, and just don't recall that portion.
I think that was God.
And probably fumbled around in the safe and got the gun out. And
I think I
thought about it.
This is what happened. Pulled in the garage. had an argument with somebody that I cared about a lot, and then left the bar, pulled in the garage, was going to kill myself there, went into the living room, pulled out the gun, took all my clothes off on the couch, and then probably passed out there, and then went upstairs to my bed at some point at the night. And so that was another wake up call. And so I made a promise to my therapist that I wouldn't drink vodka anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had successfully transitioned to wine. Not that, yeah,
Wow.
and so then, and I was good. You know, I started getting my life back together. I quit all the benzos.
By yourself, you were actually strong
Yep.
enough to get off of those by
I
yourself.
got off all the
Because
benzos.
those are really tough.
For the most part, I got off all the benzos. I had my emergency stash.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and and then I met my wife, who's been sober for 14 or 15 years now,
Mm.
and that obviously helped a lot. And then in the last 3 years, what really like did the trick was psychedelics.
Yeah, that I want to go down that road because you went out of the country to do this, and it wasn't just the psilocybin. You did other treatments.
Yeah.
But I remember you describing it as pretty instant, like meaning the impact of the treatment, and came back and just sort of knew the difference between what was poison and what wasn't. And you said, that's poisoning me, that's poisoning me, that's poisoning me. But you just were clear about it. And so talk a little bit about that journey, because clearly you are in a very dark place.
Yeah. So yeah, I kept interviewing. I mean, you know, my interviews, I interview a lot of former colleagues and warrior elites, we'll call them that. And so, you know, in my interview process, I talk about, we do a life story. This is how you grew up. This is what you experienced in combat. This is how bad it got. This is what got you through it. And then we talk about what they're doing now, their business, to help elevate that.
Mm-hmm.
And so in these interviews, first guy that I talked to was Eddie Gallagher, who had brought up psychedelic therapy. And I was like, huh, this shit sounds like it's for hippies. And
Yeah.
and then another guy came on to talk about it. And and then another guy came on to talk about it. And then
you were in the thick of it then when you were even running. Wow. Okay.
And so then I had mentioned DJ earlier. DJ interviewed him, and he was kind of like, it was sinking in, but after I interviewed him, he was like, hey, you know, I know you're considering this. Like, you should really fucking do it, man. Psychedelic stuff, it works. And I understood some of the science behind it at this time by now too. So I booked a trip and went down to Mexico to do an Ibogaine and 5-MeO therapy treatment, and
how are those done? IV?
no, you go, so 5-MeO you smoke. It's a toad venom. The Sonora desert toad, I think, is where it comes from. So you just,
I always wonder who figures this shit out.
I know, right?
Who found the first toad and was like, hey, frankly, you know, let's crush him and smoke him and see. And, wow, that really made me feel, you know, like ayahuasca.
Yeah.
You know, it's deadly poison.
I think a lot of people are saying the same thing about some of the stuff you're talking about.
No,
Gary,
this is very true.
But yeah, I don't know. And then, so you smoke that in Ibogaine. I think it comes from a root in somewhere in Africa, Gabon, or I can't remember. But that is like, it came in a capsule. And so, the Ibogaine experience was like 12 hours. I don't know how in depth you want me to go on that.
But was it 12 hours of like a trip, like you were on mushrooms or LSD, like a
Yeah,
trip?
it's a trip.
It's a trip.
It's a trip.
And I mean, I've never done ayahuasca, but some people swear by it. Some people are very afraid of it. You know, for me, the jury's still out on it. But just because I don't know that much about it, to say one way or the other, but I have seen stories of people, very credible people that have had these incredible journeys, like life-changing, like what I feel you're about to describe.
Mm-hmm.
And where they were really in a dark place and really couldn't figure it out. And first of all, thank you for being so vulnerable and really describing that that situation like that. I know it must be tough for you to even think about it. But they said it was like flicking a switch. They actually were able to, as they describe it, almost get out of their own body and look at themselves, and be really honest with themselves. And it was like they actually had an honest evaluation of themselves. Like, I'm really fucking this up, and these are the behaviors that are really causing me to stay in this constant wheel of despair and disappointment, and I'm not getting any traction in life. And they said it was so clear.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me, you know. And you said you know a little bit about the science. Is that of the psilocybin or the
easiest way for me to explain it, and I could be wrong, but this is what I've learned through my interviews, is that, you know, the older we get, I think it's obvious, right? The older we get, we see it with our parents, right? The more set in their ways that they become.
Mm-hmm.
I'm that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all that way. But the way that it was described to me several times is that the neurons in your brain travel back and forth through the default mode network.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what, from the front of your brain to the back of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't always like that. So right now, for me and you, our neurons are just going, front,
Back and forth.
And that's how they're communicating. But when we were young, we had all these other neural pathways that these neurons were using to communicate and get information to wherever the hell it needs to go. Well, as time goes on, those pathways start to close up. The neurons get lazy. They're like, oh, we're just going to go to the default mode network and we'll just communicate this way. And so now you get stuck in your ways. You get stuck in that same hamster wheel.
That habitual pattern. Mm-hmm.
And so, to my understanding, basically what some psychedelics do is they actually put a block in that default mode network. So they're not just going back and forth anymore. Now all these neurons have to find new pathways or reopen old pathways in your brain that haven't been used in years and years and years.
Wow.
And so these neurons are so it's opening, it's literally unlocking your fucking brain.
Wow. And did you feel that was going on during this 12 hours? Were you frightened or paranoid? Did you feel like terrified or like your life was going to end or anything like that?
I think
calm.
I was pretty calm. I mean,
were you aware of it?
Yeah.
Like
it's
you're
not
aware.
like, so that's the other thing is I was a little nervous that I would wind up in some type of mental or
like a persistent vegetative state or something. Yeah.
But you know, you are wired up to an EKG and an IV, but that's to get you out of something if something goes wrong. And so you can be in the middle of your experience, having your experience, and then, you know, the nurse or the doctor comes around and like shakes you and they're like, hey, you doing all right? And you lift up your eye mask and you're out of the experience. You're like, yep, all good, buddy. Going back in.
Really?
know? Yeah. And,
really like that?
It is like that. It is like you snap out of it. You know what I mean?
That is wild.
It's almost, I mean, for me, it was almost like I had to concentrate to get into it. And if I want, you know, because you
like kind of surrender.
12
to
hours. You got to take
yeah.
a pee break and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you can like snap out of it.
It sounds like you kind of liked it or you were curious about it.
I was.
Like, yeah, I can tell. You know,
was.
you put the mask back down and you're like, I want to see where this goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And, you know, I saw a couple things, but I didn't like relive any super traumatic events. It was
Mhm.
more like, the way I describe it is, it was like I had 2 rows of TV screens going through my like vision with my eyes closed.
Mhm.
And so it was just lines of them. And in each TV screen was like something that had happened in my life. And there didn't seem to be like any, it wasn't in chronological order. It wasn't like from age, you know, uh, from birth to now. It was just a bunch of, it was like somebody just put a bunch of life events on a deck of cards, shuffled them up, put them in a line, and said, "Hey, we're going to send these through Sean's brain." And so there
Wow.
was shit that was like stuff that had happened with my dad back in the day, stuff that happened in Iraq, stuff that happened when I was a teenager, stuff, you know, and it was
And
just,
did you feel like you're like, I'm seeing that. I remember that.
yeah, but it
Um,
was weird because every time I would try to jump into that specific experience, like, oh fuck, I remember that. I want to relive that, or oh, that was, anytime I would try to concentrate on any specific event, everything would go away. And
oh, dude,
so,
that's the ultimate
yeah,
torture.
yeah.
Like,
So I would have to concentrate on not trying to concentrate on any particular memory so
mm,
that they could just all filter through. And and I don't know what the hell that means,
I don't either. I
but
mean,
it was stuff that I hadn't thought about in years.
but it was accurate. These were vivid memories. Like as it
Mhm.
was, you were like, I definitely remember that.
Yep.
You know, that was my best friend. I forgot about him. Like
Yep.
that kind of stuff. Oh, I mean, I forgot I had that girlfriend in
Yeah.
college. Like, wow,
It was
that
almost
must be
like my brain was
wild.
just sorting through like thousands and thousands of
Memories.
memories.
Mm.
And then there was like some stuff that just still doesn't really make sense to me, like some Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas type shit. Like it was walls of stuffed animals, and I was on some fucking horse. Like it was weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was, but woke up. That was about a 12-hour experience, and
Wow.
woke up, went downstairs. You have a gray day. They call it a gray day after it's like the worst hangover you've ever had in your life,
Mm.
and
Like actual headache, pain.
horrible, dizzy,
Really?
vomiting, like horrible. Just,
Wow.
yeah.
And that lasted a day.
I mean, yeah. And I got up to go to the bathroom and I looked at my eyes and I remember thinking like my eyes look different. And they looked lighter. And,
Mm.
and sure as shit, I came home from that. And one of the first thing my wife said to me was, your eyes look lighter and the whites of your eyes look whiter.
Mm.
So it wasn't just me.
Mm.
And so after that, though, we did the Ibogaine. Then after that, you have your day off, and then you do the 5-MeO DMT.
Mm.
And the 5-MeO DMT, that is a very short experience, maybe 15 minutes tops, but the most profound experience of my entire life.
Really?
It was, and I don't say that lightly.
Even more
More
profound than the
my
one you
wedding,
just described?
more profound than my kids being born. Like it
Kidding.
was so intense and so revealing. Uh, I, I still remember it. Like it's a death experience. So for me,
Is it something you'd want to do again?
I've done it a couple times since.
Really?
But I wouldn't say it's a good time. You know, it's not
Yeah.
like, uh,
Because you said a profound experience, meaning like this stands out to me.
yeah.
Yeah, this is.
So
You've had
it's-
some experiences too. I mean,
it's
isn't
a
he
death.
SEAL and a father?
You die. That's the only way to describe it. You die. You don't
Really?
think you're dying. You know you die. You think you're dying. Like nobody can convince you otherwise. It's not like
I'm actually dead.
I'm paranoid, you know, pull me out of this. No, I'm fucking dying and I'm like there's nothing that can happen. And so,
But you're conscious, but you're aware that you're dead. So you accept that.
that's pretty much, I know it sounds really odd, but
And once you accept it, is it the profound sadness of the things you didn't get done in your life, the
Nope.
things you didn't say? Okay.
it's the complete opposite
Wow.
of that. So when you're dying, they call it an ego death, but first you kind of go through, and this all lasts maybe like 30 seconds, maybe. But first you go through the, holy shit, I'm dying and there's nothing I can do. And then it's, oh shit, who am I leaving behind? I can't leave them behind. And so for me, it was my wife and I think my son was like 6 months old. He was right around 6 months old at the time. And so I just like was grasping on for anything to try to live for them. I was like, I can't fucking leave my wife and kid here. This place is a disaster. But you really, you think you're departing. And then eventually you do give up. But I will say, like, at the beginning, you'd ask me, about combat experiences where I thought I was going to die. And I've been through a ton of those, but nothing like this.
Really?
This was more profound than that.
Wow. You've accepted that you're either dead or you are about to die.
Yeah. It was
truly accepted.
It was the most anxiety, most fear, most sadness that I'd ever felt all at once. And then I don't think everybody can get to this, because I know I've recommended this to everybody that works for me. I've recommended it to all my friends. What it's done for me is just so profound. And
even though the experience itself is horrible.
Yeah, because of what happens on the other side. And so if you can get to the point where you can muster up enough courage to just die, then you like fucking cross over into this new realm. And
once you surrender and say,
yep,
okay, God, I'm ready to go.
And the minute that happens, like you cross over, and man, this stuff sounds weird. And I always thought this shit was all for hippies, but it's not. And, but you hear people talk about energy, and that person has a bad energy and that person has a good energy, and energy is everything. You see that, if you come out the other side, it is, I mean, a lot of people do it on a blindfold, and a lot of people say that they go through a wormhole, they see the Big Bang, they see family lineage, they see friends that have died in combat. I wanted to do it without the eye mask. And I remember looking out over the ocean down in Mexico, and I remember every time I do a psychedelic experience, it's always I don't get a whole lot of visuals. I get a lot of intuition. And I could see energy flowing from islands to the ocean, to the beach, into the air, up the trees, in the leaves. And it was, you hear a lot of people say, oh, we're all one. Everything's connected. There's a oneness. There is a fucking oneness, man. Like,
really,
you can see and feel intuitively the flow of energy, of positive energy. And at the same time, I could feel and hear like the earth's vibration. And,
wow.
And you are so in tune with nature, God, whatever you want to call it, the universe. I mean, it's if any evil, any negative energy, any evil came into your field of view, it would stick out like a spotlight in the
Really?
darkness. And it and on the other hand, it makes you realize that there is definitely life after death.
Mm.
There is we're all going somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Now, are you a man of God? Or are you?
absolutely.
Okay.
Are you?
Yes.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Um
Saved
But-
at a Promise Keepers convention, 1994, however many years ago that was.
what's that?
1994. I got saved at a Promise Keepers convention. I went and
Awesome.
yeah. In 1994, I was in grad school and it was in Soldier Field. I gave my life to the Lord, and it was they used to have a movement called Promise Keepers. It might still be around, but my lawyer tricked me into going to this. It was a Christian men's event, and I didn't know that. And he told me it was like a motivational thing to go see these motivational speakers, and it was this movement called Promise Keepers, and I'll just never forget. I mean, I joined hands with 70,000 Christian men and started to say the Lord's Prayer, and I just fell apart and went
That's
down to
awesome.
the stage and gave my life to Christ.
Why did your attorney think that you needed to go to a
Because but he was a really strong Christian guy, and I thought I was fucked up, but after your story, I feel pretty good about myself. I feel actually really good. I'm just kidding. I was in grad school, and I was just typical, self-centered, and I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was partying a little bit. I was going through grad school, and had a decent relationship with a girlfriend at the time, and ended up becoming my wife back then. And he just was a really powerful Christian. He was like, "Hey, I want you to come to this event. I think I think you really love it. These motivational speakers, it's so inspiring." And I thought it was going to be like one of like David Goggins kind of on stage telling you to get your shit together. He wasn't around then, but so I was like, okay, I'll go. And it was a very profound experience for me.
man? Good for you.
But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so you say you're convinced now that there is something on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't. Now I'm a believer in Jesus, and
Amen. So am I.
but at that time, I just realized, honestly, like it took me. This sounds weird because it made me a better person, but it kind of took Jesus and God out of the picture for me. Not that I was like some stand-up Christian man or anything back then. Obviously, I wasn't. But
a few bumps on you.
but I was like, man, I always wondered about this. Now I know that's not real, or that's what I thought. But coming out of that,
gosh, you must
just
be so profoundly sad. Like
it was
that moment. I mean,
but I mean, I did feel the presence of my best friend Gabe, who died, and he was down in Colombia with me for a while. Another SEAL that I worked with at the agency as well. But anyways, I got home, and I told you that my wife, the first thing she had noticed was my eyes were were a lighter brown, and my whites were whiter, and I went down there to be more in the moment too with my son, because I'm a dad now, and I know a lot of business people struggle with this. How do you? I'm in love with my business. I'm sure you are too, and so it can be a challenge to turn it off at night and be in the moment with the wife and kids,
right?
And that bothers me when
there's
I can't
always
do
something to do. Yeah,
and it bothers her too. It took me right back into the moment. I was able to shut it off. It made me more. It all these weird things happened that I wasn't expecting. It made me way more efficient and productive. I was getting like a week's worth of shit done.
Hey guys, I'm really excited to announce this. Perfect Aminos has gotten a serious upgrade. They've added nucleotides, the building blocks of our nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. And this is important. We know essential amino acids are the building blocks of protein and collagen. Having all the essential amino acids in the correct ratio is necessary for complete protein synthesis without the caloric impact. But if we want perfect protein synthesis, we need to look at the process of protein synthesis itself. Because if the process is faulty, we won't get the correctly made protein, collagen, fibrin, or the red blood cells in our bloodstream or our muscles. We can even stop creation of specific proteins, which can affect us in so many different ways. Our DNA and our RNA are what direct protein synthesis, building new proteins. If our DNA or RNA get damaged from toxins, harmful bacteria, or just plain aging, we get faulty protein synthesis. So cells, enzymes, and hormones are less functional and we get premature aging. By adding nucleosides and nucleotides, the building blocks of the nucleic acids DNA and RNA, our cells get exactly what they need to help repair faulty DNA and RNA and improve the process of protein synthesis itself. This is next level science, and you need to try these. Now let's get back to the Ultimate Human podcast.
Did you just
In
realize
one
what
day.
was not important?
Yes.
Because I got to imagine on your, deathbed,
Mhm.
people that are processing their life, they can't go back and redo it now.
Mhm.
It's at the end, but maybe you get a chance to consciously look back, but you got a chance to consciously look back and then go fix it. And
Mhm.
I think that's what sounds so profound about your experience, because I saw someone on Instagram the other day, and it was a pastor who was delivering a graduation ceremony, and he talked about how many times he'd been at the bedside of a man or a woman in their last moments. And he talked about the typical things that you would say. They weren't like, hey, bring my trophies by so I can see them one more time, or can you wheel me down to the garage so I can be around the car collection? I just want to see it one last time. And, remember when we took that company public and we sold it? He said it was all just about love.
Yeah.
And the only people that he said it was the one common thing, like the only people they wanted around were the people that were really, really close to them. And maybe at that moment they appreciated them the most. But you got the enviable opportunity to go back and maybe fix it.
Yeah.
So you're super efficient, right? How about, is addiction still knocking at the door?
No.
No.
So this is the I did not even go down there to quit drinking because, like I had said, in my fucked up mind, I was fine because all I was drinking was a couple of bottles of wine a night, not vodka.
Well, when you're hamming a Colombian Bam Bam and a fifth of vodka, I'd say you're in a good place,
Yeah.
relatively speaking.
But so I lost like all my addictions. And
Wow.
so I was still taking Adderall. That's gone. I was smoking cannabis to go to sleep. I quit that for about 6 months. Now I'm back. Yeah, but sleep's like the one thing I just cannot.
I'm going to hack it for you, man. When I go on your podcast, we're going to take the clip from this podcast where you couldn't sleep, and you're going to be like, holy shit, I'm sleeping like a bear. All
Good.
right, I got you, brother.
I'd still used benzos here and there, gone. Sleeping pills, gone. Booze, gone.
Wow.
And there was sugar, gone for about 6 months. And so
Sugar's back too.
sugar's back.
Okay.
Sugar and cannabis are back. Caffeine was gone for a long time. Still don't drink coffee. Now I'll have tea.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't any effort either. It was like my mind got a download, and it was just, this shit's poison. This is poison. This is poison.
But
this
crystal
is poison.
clear.
Don't do it. And it wasn't like there was no urges. There was no cravings. There was none of that. It was just, I'm done with this shit. I'm not drinking anymore. And so this Valentine's Day will be 3 years since I've had a drink.
That's amazing, man. I mean, like I said, for me, the jury is still out on those. Just, I don't have my arms around it enough, but I've had people like yourself, credible, that have had these just profound experiences. That is an amazing story, and I'm sure that you now know other people that have gone through the same thing, that have had similar
Tons
stories.
of them.
Wow, it's incredible.
I know a guy, really good friend of mine. I'm just going to say it because it's helping so many fucking people, man. But this guy was blown up in Afghanistan, survived the worst. He was in the worst car bomb that I've seen somebody actually live through. I'll put it that way. Basically turned a Toyota Land Cruiser inside out, and he lived through that.
He drove over
he got hit by a suicide bomber.
Okay.
Then fast forward, then he got shot in the head in a road rage accident with a 38 special, lights out in the middle of the road, still has shrapnel in his brain. And so I'm really good friends with him. He was a former Green Beret, worked with him at the agency. And when he got shot in the head, I had gone down to help him and his wife. And he's just been struggling ever since. Well, his wife called me and my wife one day, and she was saying that he is bedridden 5 to 6 days a week. Can't get out of bed. When he can get out of bed, his vertigo is so bad he has to walk around with a cane. He can't go outside without sunglasses on, even on a cloudy day, because his light sensitivity is so bad. We haven't had sex in over 2 years. And I'm thinking, holy fuck, man. And I had told him about this therapy several times. Called him up, connected him with some people, got him down there super fast. And he fucking walked out of that exact same experience that I did, left his cane there as a souvenir for these people. He's like, I don't need this shit anymore. Went home, fucked his wife, doesn't need the sunglasses anymore, isn't bedridden. This was probably about 6 months ago. Still doing great today.
Wow. That is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is incredible. I mean, this is so far outside of the ultimate human. That is just incredible, though, man. And, and I think my intellectual curiosity really wants to dig in. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole on this because, RFK, he posted a statement. I thought it was pretty badass. And he mentioned psychedelics, and I don't know if you saw this, but he has said the FDA's war on public health is about to end. This includes the aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, raw milk, hyperbaric therapies, chelating compounds, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, vitamins, clean food, sunshine, exercise, nutraceuticals, and anything else that advances human health and can't be patented by Big Pharma. If you work for the FDA and you're part of this corrupt system, I have 2 messages for you. Number 1, preserve your records. And number 2, pack your bags.
Damn. I love that guy.
I love that guy too. Because when you have people in your condition, in your friend's condition, when we have tens of thousands of, our military men and women that are permanently on the chemical hamster wheel, which is further destroying their life. And there's something that an adult can do to make a sound decision for their own body with a full understanding of the consequences. Why are we preventing people from accessing these kinds of therapies when all they have is a persistent vegetative state, like what your friend had basically found himself in?
Yeah.
That's not living. I mean, you're alive, but you're not living.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan. I remember during COVID, there was the right to try. And, this was only for the people that were in the darkest parts of their life. They were in the ICU with pulmonary fibrosis. They didn't have, modern medicine had nothing left to offer, and things started parachuting in, like stem cells and exosomes and nebulized exosomes, and people were coming off of ventilators and respirators, and fibrotic tissue in their lungs was actually becoming healthy tissue. Things like medicine would have told you could have never happened. Nerves remyelinating and things like that. And to me, the pace of medicine is slow because we have to move at the pace of the regulatory environment, which I totally understand and embrace, because you can't have a bunch of charlatans just putting random stuff into human beings. But it's really, it's really profound to know that it can have that big of an effect on somebody's life. I want to sort of pull us out of the hole for a second. I know that you got to be really happy with what happened in this last election, but for you and military men and women that are in your group, I mean, what does the future look like for you? What does it mean to you? What does this election mean to you?
Man,
as far as the direction of the country and
I mean, I could tell you, when they pulled off the win, Trump and Vance, I got to tell you, man, like, I did not realize how much baggage I was running around with on a daily basis.
Were you an angry little Smurf?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been trying to. I just couldn't. I couldn't understand like what the fuck we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are we going to send the Taliban $80 million a week? Did you know that we were doing that?
No,
we were sending the Taliban $80 million a week in cash. In cash.
For what?
Great question.
We already gave them $83 billion in equipment.
A week.
Maybe they needed the fuel.
A week. We did.
Wow.
And so I started, sending up flags through my podcast on that. Got a lot of politicians involved to try to cut that funding. But basically what it was is we were sending, basically we were funding Afghan NGOs or nonprofits without looking into them at all. And so the Taliban, I can't remember the exact number. It was like 900 new NGOs since within the first year of the Afghan withdrawal. And those were all set up by Afghans. And so I don't want to go too far into that.
It's unbelievable.
Or by Taliban. Sorry, not set up by Afghans. Set up by
leakage
Taliban.
like that, and nobody, you always hear about the the $5,000 toilet seat that made it through the government, but to think that there's holes that big that could be filled, it's
crazy, man.
Yeah,
and then to see people not want to give it any light of day because it makes their guy look bad. It's like, do you know how many fucking people are gonna die? Like 9/11 was a $500,000 budget. We're sending them $80 million a week. How the fuck do you think this is gonna turn out?
Yeah.
And it was that. It was the border. It's Ukraine. I don't even know why I'm saying was, because all this is still going on, but it's our power grid. It's the Chinese state. It's our what the hell am I trying to say? The supply chain. Do you know about the power grid? How vulnerable that is?
Yeah,
our water supply. Like,
it is unbelievable how I'm not a doomsdayer, but I have an off the grid place in Colorado that's solar fed electricity, glacier fed spring water, well and septic, no bunker, but we've got our own little 50-acre slice of paradise out there. And I'll tell you what, I'm happier out there than I am in this beautiful place in Miami.
Yeah.
And it's super basic. I got a freaking, I've got a propane stove and a little fox that comes onto the, porch every night. And I get this free-loading deer that eat my flowers every day. And it's amazing. I have the razors that you just rage around the mountain. They got a shooting range on the back of the property. And it's at 10,500 feet. When you spend the summer up there and then you come back to Miami to sea level, you feel like,
Yeah.
You took a limitless pill,
Yeah.
It's my workouts for like 4 or 5 weeks are incredible.
It's like simplicity.
And so is sleep. Yeah. But it's simplicity. I was talking actually to Devin Levesque about this, and he's got this incredible micro farming concept that he's building these communities around, animals that are, being raised and then, turned into food, and raising your own vegetables and growing your own food and building a community around it, and having these membership clubs that are actually built around sort of getting people back in touch with nature and into a community where you're just doing the basics: sauna, cold plunge, conversation, clean whole foods, and an environment where you're back in touch with nature. And I so identify with that because nothing makes me feel better. None of all this fancy equipment. I probably got $1.5 million worth of equipment in this apartment, but then put on a 20-pound rucksack and going for literally a 4-mile walk in the woods.
Yeah.
Not even kidding. Like, I get back from that and I tune into myself and I'm like, holy shit, I feel amazing. I'll put on a heavy vest and a pair of boots, and I grabbed the water bottle and just did this little 4-mile hike. And I wasn't even trying to bust my own balls. I wasn't trying to push myself so hard to even improve my fitness. It's just walk in the woods with a 20-pound rucksack.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how simple that is. And, there's a lot of evidence now that exercise is more impactful than SSRIs for treating, depression. Like they say, you want to fix somebody's depression, push them in cold water. Right? Push a sad person in cold water and see if they're still sad when they get out.
Yeah.
It's and it just reminds me so much how just getting back to the basics can be so profound.
Can I say this? We were talking about, what the election meant to me.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, that I think part of the reason we got to where we were is because people in this country are scared to tell the truth and to stand up to shit that they don't like.
I agree.
And here we are now, right? We got through that 4 years, which was a fucking disaster.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what it was? It was people like you and people like me and Rogan and Lex Friedman and all these podcasters who, well, actually, I can't even say all these
able to get around the media.
A small handful of podcasters who don't care what people think of them and aren't scared of what might happen for just asking asking questions, just asking questions, the right questions, and standing up against this shit just from talking on a podcast, and I think it's podcasts that pulled us out of this because the mainstream media was putting out garbage. I mean, still is.
I just saw an announcement today of a reporter that just announced he's going to write a hit piece on me. Did one on Rogan, one on Joe Dispenza, did one on like Huberman and A.G. Greens, and now he's like, just made the announcement that I'm his next.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. So I feel like I kind of won the lottery. I'm like, wow, somebody actually wants
put my name on that
do
list.
a whole journalistic, do it on both of us.
But what I want to say is, I mean, we're all still here. None of us are in prison. None of us are dead. Our businesses are all exploding because we did that. And so when it starts to get tough again, don't be a fucking pussy and speak up and say what's on your mind. And maybe we won't wind up here again because that's what happened.
I think that's a very valuable lesson learned. Well, look, this has been amazing. I wanted to make sure that before we close things out, that I talk about what's a day in the life of, like, your daily routine look like now. I mean, because the drugs and the alcohol are gone, the benzos are gone, the Adderall's gone, all of those things that sort of blurred the lines between daytime, nighttime, reality and fiction. Those have all moved out of your life. You got 2 beautiful kids, in an incredible marriage. I hear you speak about your wife, and you hear the changes that you went through when your son was born. So what is a day in the life
look like now? I mean, do you have a cold plunge routine? Do you have a morning routine? Do you have a exercise routine?
I have a light exercise routine, but
I think a Navy SEAL would have a pretty intense exercise routine.
I've
you feel like
gotten-
you exercized enough back in the day that you're good?
pretty much.
You banked it.
But
You put so many deposits.
no, I do a light workout every morning. And then, to be honest with you, Gary, me and my wife are really trying to just figure out, our big goal this year was health.
That's
and,
awesome. I'm
and
glad to be a
so
part of that journey, man.
we have tried to, I mean, we don't know where to look, man. You know what I mean? So we've cleaned the diet up, started going to what do they call?
Naturopath.
Yeah, naturopath doctors. I don't know if I'm not plugging them, but it's helped me a ton. The Yuka app. Have you heard of the Yuka app? It's like this app you put on your phone. You can pretty much scan just about
I've
anything.
seen that. And it tells you what the contents of the grocery are.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know it was called Yuka. I have seen that before. It's actually pretty good.
Tells you the additives, what the additives do to you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we found that app. We went through our entire kitchen in like one night.
So good,
scanning everything, throw just about everything out. All the shit we thought was healthy turns out is horrible for you.
It is, yeah.
So we started doing that. We're really just trying to clean it up, man, and figure out. I mean, it's like every day now. I feel like I hear somebody, dying of cancer, or
Highest rates of childhood cancer, in history. It's almost a 1 in 2 now.
So we're trying to clean it up, and I think I know we've done a really good job, because I'll taste foods that I don't eat anymore after doing this for 6 to 9 months, and I'll taste the fucking chemicals in there.
Yeah. No, Devin and I were literally talking about how your palate changes, and like when you eat whole foods, you crave whole nutritious foods. And without going too deep down the rabbit hole of the science behind it, but we have a hormone in our body released in our gut called GLP-1. And essentially it's the satiation hormone. It tells us that we're full. And, Big Pharma also makes it, semaglutide, Wegovy, Ozempic. But you can raise that in response to really whole nutritious foods, like what we had in the kitchen before we came in here. And highly processed foods, unnatural flavorings, food additives, colors, dyes, preservatives, chemicals, synthetics, artificial sweeteners, those don't satiate us, or our body doesn't recognize them. So the brain doesn't think you've eaten. And so it needs you to eat more because it needs the nutrients. I mean, it's an infinitely complex but very intelligent organ, and it knows we haven't gotten enough nutrients. So you're gonna eat again, and if you keep eating the same processed shit, this is why the obesity pandemic is what it is. We want to push down on the obesity with weight loss drugs instead of pushing up on obesity with whole foods. You look at videos from, we talked about this too, from JFK, like you look at high schools in the 50s and the 60s, play find the fat person. Like they just weren't. They're all fit. They're doing muscle ups and climbing up the walls with their little hand dowels and running a mile in, under 7 minutes, and everybody's fit and lean. And now we've just, we're the sickest, fattest, most disease-ridden nation in the world of all the civilized nations.
It's crazy.
But this is just been incredible, man. I'm first of all, I'm very excited, and I take great pride in you trusting me to be a part of that health journey. I'm excited to talk about that on your podcast. But before I wind down every podcast, I ask all my guests the same question. And there's no right or wrong answer to this question. And it's, what does it mean to you to be an ultimate human?
What does it mean to me to be an ultimate human?
Because I think you're an ultimate human.
I think to be an
reasons.
ultimate human, you have to constantly think about how you're going to leave this world a better place than when you entered it. Be a good husband, be a good father. If you're not either one of those, then find somebody to mentor and make them a better person.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Well, this has been incredible, Shawn. I want to have you back sometime, man. Your journey is
astounding. You made a huge impact. And my audience is going to absolutely love this. So thank you for
sir.
coming on, man.
I appreciate
And
it.
as always, that's just science, guys.